Hello everyone, so my name is Patrick, and today I'll be going over a tutorial on how to design actually good multiple choice questions. So, of course, multiple choice questions is something we're all familiar with as a student, or as a teacher, or instructor, something every one of us has done before. I'll be going over some common pitfalls, some examples of badly designed multiple choice questions, going into how often multiple choice questions are badly designed, and what to do to avoid falling into these mistakes. So, we're going to start off with a study by Dr. Nato Kayo and his team. They took a close look at 2,500 multiple choice questions used in a hospital e-learning system. So the thing is, you might be thinking that most multiple choice assessments are pretty fair, but actually, looking at these items, only 15% of the questions they looked at had zero flaws. The vast majority of them had at least one flaw, and a good amount of them had multiple flaws. So you might be wondering what a flaw would be. Here's a list of some of them. All of the above questions, you might be confused on that. We'll touch upon that in a second. Next up, implausible distractors. I'm sure you've done a test before where you looked at some of the answers and you're like, oh, this one's stupid. It's obviously not a potential answer. This is a common flaw that you'll find as well. Logical and grammatical cueing, we'll touch upon that in a second, as well as the similar length of options. So next up, I'll be going over another study by Schmucker and Moore. And the key takeaway from this study basically is that there are two things you should be looking at when you look at a multiple choice assessment when you're designing it. The first is discrimination, and what you want is high discrimination. That is good, not in society, but on a test. Discrimination basically means how well in a test question differentiates between high knowledge and low knowledge test takers. So high discrimination means that the students with high knowledge are very likely to get the question right, and students with low knowledge are more likely to get the question wrong. Ideally, this is what you want because your question should be measuring knowledge and not anything else. If someone who doesn't have a lot of knowledge on the subject is getting the question right, then that suggests a flaw in the question, whether some cueing or a mistake in the question design, which we'll cover in our examples next. Okay, so here's an example question. You might not know who this is, but feel free to take a look and see if you can deduce the right answer. Feel free to pause. I'm going to flip to the next slide in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so if you're able to get B, then great job. If not, it's okay. But the thing to keep in mind here is there's only one grammatically correct answer to this problem. If you're paying attention, you might notice the article and. This is a grammatical cue due to vowel agreement. So because you can deduce the answer is B even if you don't know who Hypatia was, this is an example of a test question with poor discrimination and poor difficulty, where someone with no knowledge can still be fairly easily able to get this question right. Okay, totally different subject, but feel free to take a look or pause if you want. There's a way you can get the right answer, but I'm going to turn it over in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so if you got D, then you are correct. And this might be a strategy some of you are familiar with, aka the longest option is usually correct. And a lot of times you might be designing a test and you might not be, professional test question designer. You might put a lot of effort into the correct answer, and then for the rest you just make some things up. You're not putting too much thought into it. Thing is, it can be really easy to tell when that's what you're doing, especially in a question like this. So that's a common bias that people don't notice when they're designing tests, and something you should be aware of and not making that mistake. Okay, feel free to take a look. I'm going to turn it over in 3, 2, 1. Okay, if you got E, then you are correct. So we touched upon all the above questions and why they're listed as a flaw. The thing is, all the above questions are not what you want. Always avoid them whenever you can. The reason is, well, just look at this question. Do you know what Gokeliko is, or current? Most people might not. These are all shades of red, yes. the reason why E is still an easy answer to get, even if you don't know all of the terms used, is C and D are both good hints. They're both commonly known shades of red. And if you know that two are correct, that means E is the only logical answer. So this is the problem with all of the above or none of the above questions. Guessing becomes much easier. You only need to know some of the terms in the question in order to get the right answer. And this lowers discrimination, lowers difficulty, and does not accurately test knowledge. So try to avoid them whenever you can. Okay, just going to let you guys know off the bat, there is no answer to this one, so don't worry about it. I'm just going to flip to the next one. If you did look at the question for more than 5 seconds, you can feel free to do so right now. You might notice that this question feels like you're having a stroke because there's a lot of negatives in here. Of course, we learned about cognitive load in class. This is something you don't want. This is not even a knowledge type of question. It's more like a logic problem, which unless that's something you're trying to test in your assessment, that's not something you want. So always try to avoid confusing wording and especially excessive negatives as much as you can. Okay, last question. Feel free to take a look, pause. I'm going to flip it over in 3, 2, 1. Okay, if you got C, then you have been paying really close attention. You might have noticed that Hypatia was mentioned on the first slide, and the answer to this question was actually on the first slide as well. And this is another queuing flaw due to what's called inter-item dependency, where one question or the answer to a previous question gives away the answer to another question. And this can definitely be a big problem. It's also a very common problem as well. And especially on tests where the order of questions is randomized, this is something you really don't want, because some students will be getting an unfair advantage compared to others. So always keep that in mind when you're designing the assessment. Okay, so we're on to the last slide. Kind of running out of time, so just gonna make this fast. Ways to avoid these mistakes. Number one is a lot of times we have subject matter experts designing test questions, and while they are the most knowledgeable on a subject, they're not always the best at designing assessments. So always pair experts with instructional designers or educators if you can. Workshops are always a good way to identify common flaws and mistakes and fix them. And most people designing multiple choice questions without too much experience, they always have some tendencies or bad habits that can be easily identified, like all the above questions or using obvious distractors, super long correct answers, other cues like that. Always good to try to identify these and fix them. Next thing is analytics. Nowadays it's very easy to analyze your assessments. Just see what percent of your students are getting this question wrong, whether this question has high difficulty, high discrimination, which is again what you want. Those will be your best questions, the ones with the highest discrimination. And lastly, just going to bring this up briefly. There's some studies on this that I didn't cite, but there are studies out there. LLMs or AIs are really good at finding flaws in multiple choice assessments, like the flaws we talked about. So if you don't have a person that can help look at your assessment, AI will do a good job in a pinch. Okay, so here's my works cited. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you learned something out of this, and maybe next time you're doing an assessment or designing one, you might remember some of these concepts we talked about and some of these pitfalls to avoid. But thank you very much for listening, and have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.